Currently, we have 35 states, but that does not mean we have 35 languages in the Constitution. There were other things that happened between 1956 and 2008, because of which we had to have more states. Language was not the only flag for a particular state creation, but it was very important that the political barrier was solved in this particular manner. The social barriers, if you look at the social barriers, you find that we had different kinds of religion, different kinds of classes, different kinds of castes. It's a kind of category which doesn't exist in other parts of the world, but we had the division of people based on what they actually did, which was among the 4 different castes. A couple of them are called the twice-born castes. They have a particular ritual because of which they call twice-born. And you had the Brahmins, who were the upper echelons of the society, who were advising the people. They were busy in intellectual pursuits, in knowledge creation, dissemination. Then we had the Kshatriyas, who were a ruling class. Then we had the Vaishyas, who were into the business and commerce, and we had the others. So this was the kind of situation in ancient India, but we had to overcome these barriers. So there had to be special constitutional provision which was made in India because of this. So we had 2 kinds of divisions. One, the caste division, another, the tribe division. The tribes spoke different languages. As I said, there are a large number of languages. So the 8% people who belonged to the different tribes, for them we had to have some kind of an affirmative action. So in terms of educational institution, gaining admission to the institutions, they had preference. We also had preference for them in the job, and various other kinds of preferences which were given to them. So constitutional guarantee was built into the whole system of bringing them into the national network. So eventually about 60 years of experience of affirmative action in the country has now ensured that there are a large number of people belonging to different tribes, which are very small, tiny tribes, speaking different languages, who are in the decision-making authority position at this point of time. Same thing happened with the castes. 16% of them who were one of those castes which are ranked at the lowest of the lowly, those were given preferences in our constitution for job and various other kinds of activities. We also had various constitutional guarantees which were built in to the entire system. I don't have to give you all the details of the constitutional guarantees, but people were free to speak in whichever mother tongue they wished to in assemblies and parliament. There was a particular article where if the President of India was satisfied, then he could or she could find one of the other languages as part of the official language status of this particular state. Article 29, protection of linguistic minorities. Article 30, right of minorities to establish, administer their own educational institutions. Then Article 350, the grievances could be voiced in any one of those languages. Many of those constitutional guarantees ensured that there were these provisions which were to overcome the barriers. Now I'll quickly run through some of these, some of the other slides. I was trying to say that the imagination that created India, which was earlier only a cultural entity, not a political entity, was an imagination which was based on the territory, the economics, the politics, the culture, and the history. All of them had worked together to have this country together. Now, most of these ideas could begin very simply. Like in case of European Union, it began very simply with the idea of a commerce, and then it became a separate entity altogether. But in case of India, this began historically in a particular manner, and we understand there was this interplay of order and disorder in India, which always worked in our favor. We knew that the things began with ideas. For instance, democracy began with an idea in India to try it out. Constitutional guarantees for all kinds of languages began with an idea. But when now we are threatened, when the languages are threatened, or the communities are threatened, it's the same idea which acts as an institution. So Constitution then becomes an institution for us to safeguard the linguistic rights of the people. So in Indian scenario, basically we had the license to question, license to critique, and that was the strong basis which built into the checks and balances of the bigger entity such as this country. Three kinds of tensions work in India. One is a tension of being and becoming. Being bilingual is natural, but becoming bilingual.
We have 5 minutes left for our last speaker, which is really not fair.
Yeah, I'll summarize. Yes. Yeah.
To.
So there are three kinds of tensions. One is being bilingual, becoming bilingual. One is how do you perceive yourself, and how do you perceive the other, and how do you include the other language speakers into your own. I would conclude by saying that this has been the story of India. We always were threatened with the information age, with new technologies coming in, but they really didn't flatten out the language surface of the country. They added to the multilingualism, both in television, in internet, and other kind of network. So that, to give you some idea of how exactly the globalization impact was tried and attempted to be resolved in the Indian scenario. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Singh.